sudden, after the Democrats suffer a shellacking of the century, Ezra Klein has his come to Jesus moment and realizes that there's a real problem with crime in these blue cities. Congratulations. No, that is it. Progressives are powerless now. Okay, they have no credibility. They are completely powerless. They refuse to recalibrate. They continued promoting policies that made the lives of working class people far worse in liberal cities, okay? And now no one's going to listen to them when it comes to the bread and butter issues. Yeah. They have no power. I mean, it's just so ridiculous to me, but that's where we're at. Yeah. So when people tuned into our election coverage and they were like, well, why isn't Anna upset? I wasn't upset because I knew it was coming.
Meanwhile, releasing the prisoners like he's Bane out of Batman, right? And so, look, guys, do we want people who smoke pot to go into prison? Absolutely not. Do we want the draconian laws? Absolutely not. But we never said let all the prisoners go. When did we say that?
Donald Trump put up the best Republican performance for a Republican nominee for president in at least 20 years, if not the entire 21st century. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco. Across the map, Donald Trump put up historically strong numbers for Republican candidate for president in places that, truthfully, if you had asked me 8 years ago, I would have never thought possible.
Progressive TYT confronts one big issue, that the progressive left has collapsed.
The thing that surprised me least about the election was the sharp red shift in these big cities. Because if you just talk to anybody who lives in them, they are furious. And this idea that like, oh no, the economy is actually good or crime is actually down, this is all just Fox News, like shut up with that.
Congratulations, everyone. Libs have caught on to something that we figured out 2 years ago. Crime is a problem. And if you just tell people, voters specifically, that it's not a problem, and it was way worse in the 90s, so you shouldn't be complaining, there will be backlash. There will be blood, okay? And so here we are. Ezra Klein was on Pod Save America to reflect on the disastrous election cycle that we just experienced for the Democratic Party. And he touched on how poorly blue cities have been run by progressive leaders. Got to keep it real. And so here's more of his argument. Here's more of his revelations, and then we'll break it down further.
Now, I don't know if you guys know, but I am a refugee from the city of New York because things were getting so bad in New York. Crime was up, the migrant crisis up there. Remember they're sending the migrants up to New York?
A New York welcome after a Texas rejection. On Wednesday morning, 3 more buses filled with migrants arriving in New York City.
And let's not talk about how bad crime had got, because remember, even in New York City, they had to send a National Guard into the subway because people were so scared.
Expect to start seeing hundreds of National Guard members throughout the subway system conducting random bag checks.
High taxes, high crime, and the migrant crisis, it was a disaster. So that's the reason why we left New York. But not everyone is able to just relocate like that. And that is the problem that's going on in those Democrat-run cities. Now let's see what ultra-progressive, ultra-left-wing Pod Save America thinks about what's going on.
The sense of disorder rising, right? Not just crime, but homeless encampments, trash on the streets, people jumping turnstiles in ways, crazy people on the streets. You just talk to people and they're mad about it. They feel it's different than it used to be. I mean, in San Francisco, like the fury is overwhelming. And you see that it's not just the presidential level. London Breed, the SF mayor, just lost re-election. In Oakland, they recalled the mayor. A bunch of the progressive DAs across the country were recalled or beaten in re-election campaigns. If Eric Adams has a lot of problems, but if he were obviously on the ballot, he would almost certainly, it seems to me, lose. You have to be able to govern well. People don't follow politics, but they live in the place they live.
Yeah, I follow politics, and I also live in the place I live. And I've been furious for several years now. And everyone immediately, oh, Anna's just a secret right-winger. Anna's just a secret right-winger. No. I'm not a secret right-winger. I see the dysfunction, and I see working class Americans getting their catalytic converters stolen, okay, getting their homes broken into, getting assaulted on the subway or the train.
Now, I want to be clear. Anna was pushing some of these crazy left-wing policies too, right? But she became a victim of those policies. Matter of fact, here is her explaining it.
Living in LA, I mean, I've there's homeless people everywhere, right? So I've never had problems. I didn't think anything of it. But as I was bending down to pick up my dog's mess, one of the guys like grabs me by my hips, and he had an erection. Oh God. And just starts like humping me. And I didn't know what to do. I opened up about this on the show, not really thinking much of it. And before I know it, I'm starting to get these messages, and it's like really, really harsh stuff. And it's about how you are painting a picture of the homeless community. You know, how could you be like this? You know, these are your unhoused neighbors and they need help. A few people accused me of being racist when I had never disclosed the race of the individuals who did this to me. And in fact, they were white.
They eat their own, mama.
Some of the people.
They eat their own on the extreme left.
And I'm supposed to just shut my mouth about it and tell everybody everything's fine because it's not the 90s? No, I'm not going to wait until after the election to talk about how it's a problem. I'm going to talk about it well before the election so, you know, maybe Democrats, maybe progressives can recalibrate. But that's the thing about the left. They don't believe in recalibrating, okay? They think they know it all. They think they're the best. They think that anyone who crosses them or tweaks them or critiques them is the bad guy. And congratulations, in the state of California, Donald Trump flipped 10 blue counties into red counties. Let's take a look at the map. This is the electoral map. First one on the left-hand side, of course, is from 2020. And then, oh, would you look at that? One of the most liberal parts of the country has become increasingly red. I wonder why that happened.
When you zoom in on this map, it's incredible to see, but California has definitely gotten more red. She's not lying about that.
Okay, in New York, last time Biden won, Trump lost by 24. This time he only lost by 12. Remember, he was talking about how he's going to win New York, and of course he wasn't going to win New York, and that was outrageous. But what he was getting at is, I'm going to do a lot better than you expect, and he did. Except there was one show that expected it, and it was us.
Cenk, what are you talking about? You predicted Kamala was going to win.
Okay, so my official prediction that I am forced into by my own network is 286 to 252 Kamala Harris with tons of fingers crossed. And the number one reason why I'm crossing those fingers is because 4 years with Donald Trump will be utter chaos, anarchy, pilfering, oligarchy amplified on steroids, putting his donors completely in charge of the government. Elon Musk will be in charge of domestic policy. Miri Madelson will be in charge of foreign policy. This is not how it's supposed to work.
RFK Jr. will be in charge of medical and health policy. And
I mean, this is madness, guys. He went from drain the swamp to I'm just going to hand the government to my donors. Yeah. That is a hell of a turnaround, and one of the reasons that I'm picking Kamala Harris over him today, because I think he lost the thread. If he stayed on corruption, he stayed on populism, wasn't a lunatic, I think he would have won this election. But we don't know yet. Maybe he still wins it.
Now, it's almost sounding like Cenk is trying to pretend that he predicted Trump was going to win. Matter of fact, he predicted the other guy was going to win and then railed against Trump. So that didn't seem like what he was just saying, that he was saying, be careful, Trump may win. He was almost saying, hey, I really want Kamala to win because Trump is so horrible.
So I want to go to a segment featuring Harry Enton because, you know, they did their post-election analysis and they noticed a trend when it came to, you know, the blue parts, like the bluest parts of the country and what they have noticed following the 2024 presidential election. So let's take a look at that.
Donald Trump put up the best Republican performance for a Republican nominee for president in at least 20 years, if not the entire 21st century. We're talking about Chicago, Los Angeles, New York City, San Francisco. Across the map, Donald Trump put up historically strong numbers for Republican candidate for president in places that, truthfully, if you had asked me 8 years ago, I would have never thought possible.
No, I mean, it is really stunning. So what exactly is driving it?
What's driving it? You know, I think immigration, one of the things you mentioned earlier on in that last segment, is part of it, but I think crime is a big part of it as well.
Yep.
If you look at Gallup polling, you ask Democrats nationwide, are you satisfied or dissatisfied with our efforts to control and bring down the crime rate? What you see is the dissatisfaction number now versus a decade ago. Look at that. The unsatisfied number from 35% to 58%. The satisfied number dropped by 20 points.
Now, this is shocking. This number is shocking. They've essentially flipped on the issue of crime. And if you think about it, if you're in New York, if you're in Chicago, if you're in these places, these are the high crime places. So Democrats got shellacked there. And the rest of the country is like, we don't want to become like those guys. They don't even want to acknowledge the problem, that crime is a problem. So yeah, these numbers are amazing.
That's okay. Just go to them and tell them everything's fine. Crime isn't as bad as it was in the 90s. That's not politics, okay? That's not trying to win. That's digging your heels in and insisting that you're right, even as there's widespread concern over these issues. Look, the main role of government is to protect its citizens. And in these situations, in these blue cities, when the public doesn't feel that Democratic leadership is doing enough to protect working class people, okay, they're not going to favor the Democrats. And as they're being gaslit, they're just going to increasingly get angry. How do I know that? Because I've experienced it firsthand myself. Progressives are powerless now. Okay, they have no credibility. They are completely powerless. They refused to recalibrate. They continued promoting policies that made the lives of working class people far worse in liberal cities, okay? And now no one's going to listen to them when it comes to the bread and butter issues. Yeah. They have no power. I mean, it's just so ridiculous to me, but that's where we're at.
Yeah.
So when people tuned into our election coverage and they were like, well, why isn't Anna upset? I wasn't upset because I knew it was coming.
And I did watch a little bit of TYT's election coverage, and she did look a little bit more relaxed than she did in 2016 when he won the first time. Well, she was a lot more relaxed, to be fair. So, and I think if you watch this channel and you watch a lot of the political stuff, you could have really seen this coming. I predicted Trump was going to win the election. I thought it was going to be closer, but I did think he predicted he was going to win. But everything from the migrant crisis to crime in those cities, it's really put a bad taste in everybody's mouth. And Kamala just went and said, hey, I'm still going to do what the last guy did. And obviously what the last guy, being Joe Biden, was doing wasn't working. So it was kind of like, yeah, we're not going to rehire you. You're fired.
So, but there's a second part of that that's so important, Anna. You're right. It ironically ruins the progressive brand, even though it was the establishment Democrats that actually passed it into law in California. We didn't do anything about it. And it ruins it when we have incredibly popular policies, including Medicare for All, that polls at 70%. All of the economically popular policies are progressive. But now you can't say progressive because they made progressive into pro-crime and pro-extreme policies.
Look at the cities on this list. Would you consider them to have progressive mayors, progressive prosecutors? And these are the cities that went light on crime, right? San Francisco, LA. They just voted out their progressive DA. So to pretend that these aren't progressive policies is lunacy. Cenk is just lying to you. He's making it up now. These are progressive cities. These were progressive policies. These policies failed. Now to pretend that they weren't progressive is acting like your audience is stupid.
And by the way, I mean, look, 70% of voters in California approved Proposition 36, which is a reversal of an earlier ballot measure.
Proposition 36 on the November ballot would change California law when it comes to punishments for drug use and for theft. Under current law, as long as you only steal $950 or less, that's a misdemeanor. That's a sort of a citation. Even if you do it a dozen times in an afternoon, that's a dozen different citations. Prop 36 would change that. For those who are offended multiple times, you could end up in state prison. Plus, it would start a new category where if you're a drug user, you will have a choice, either go to state prison or go to court-ordered rehabilitation. Now, it's supported by the California District Attorneys Association, California Retailers Association. They say crime is out of hand. We need to do something. We need to get tough. The governor of California, Gavin Newsom, he's opposed. He says it will result in mass incarceration, particularly for black and brown Californians. Prop 36, really the marquee ballot measure for the state, getting tough on crime.
That everyone was lied to about, right? Like the whole idea was, hey, we're going to stop putting people in prison for minor drug offenses or drug possession. In reality, what that proposition from 2014 did is it lessened all sorts of serious felonies into misdemeanors. And now no one in the state trusts the left on these issues. And so there was a ballot measure this time around regarding forcing inmates to do labor, right, against their will.
The California Constitution currently contains the following two sentences. Slavery is prohibited. Involuntary servitude is prohibited except to punish crime. As you can see, this language makes mandatory prison labor legal. Prop 6 would undo that. This sentence would change to read, slavery and involuntary servitude are prohibited. And Prop 6 would add another line of law to the Constitution. The Department of Corrections and Rehabilitation shall not discipline any incarcerated person for refusing a work assignment. That's it. That's the entire prop. For context, yes, required prison labor is a thing. The state analysts tell us about a third of the prison population has jobs, and many earn less than $1 an hour. Prisons use carrots and sticks to get inmates working. The carrots, like earning money and credit towards early release, would remain legal if Prop 6 were to pass. The sticks, like losing your phone privileges for refusing to work, those wouldn't be legal anymore. If you look in the official voter guide, you won't find any argument against Prop 6. No one bothered to submit one to the state. A yes vote on Prop 6 would ban forced prison labor. A no vote rejects the measure.
And it had no opposition, right? Like it was supposed to ban prisons from being able to do that to inmates. No one opposed that ballot measure, and that ballot measure failed.
In California, voters have rejected Proposition 6. It was called yesterday evening. This measure would have ended forced labor in the state's prison system by removing language in the state constitution.
No, that ballot measure outlawed slavery, and it failed.
It failed.
That's disgusting. That should have passed. It should have passed 99-1. I don't know who's pro-slavery other than Mark Robinson in North Carolina. And so,
listen, people, you got to really think about this. California was so tired of progressive policies that the progressive left put up slavery. We just gonna outlaw slavery for everybody. No opposition. And it failed. Yeah, I think California's getting a little bit more red every single day.
Because it was very public and it was a big deal when everyone was dogpiling me as the big baddie for bringing up these issues. So you didn't have to come and support me 2 years ago. You didn't have to do it a year ago. But how about a month ago? Now all of a sudden, after the Democrats suffer a shellacking of the century, Ezra Klein has his come to Jesus moment and realizes that there's a real problem with crime in these blue cities. Congratulations.
All of a sudden, the pronouns are getting removed from their their description. I think AOC did that today?
Yeah, AOC did that.
Yeah, okay, all of a sudden there's no she, her, blah, blah, blah.
Love it. All right, starting off with AOC, she has apparently removed she, her pronouns from her X profile.
And if you guys remember, I said, why are we saying this? If there's a confusion, you say it, you be proud, I love it, I'll back you up, right? But why am I saying he, him, his for me? Just fairly obvious. Like, it was virtue signaling.
Yes.
And that when we called it out. If you want to know who had it figured out from the beginning, so let's go to an old clip of ours from 2023. This is as it was, the busing had begun. Watch this. Look, I said this on day one. I'm going to repeat it even with greater fervor today. I think that what Texas did makes sense. And so I know that a lot of people on the left don't want to hear that. But think about it, guys. So they had this immigration problem all along. And it wasn't spread out to many different states. It was just in Texas. And of course, the other border states. And the federal government kept saying, I don't care. Okay. Now, to be fair, the federal government, it doesn't just quite say that. It has a lot of different programs in place. And the border states said, why? Why do we have to shoulder all of this by ourselves? And started shipping it to other places that were more left-wing and said they were more open to immigrants. So you're open to immigrants? Here you go. Here's immigrants. And now all of a sudden, New York realizes, okay, well, being open to immigrants has consequences. They're not welcoming of immigrants. I am. But that doesn't mean that we have to make New Mexico, Texas, and Arizona deal with the whole thing.
Agreed.
No, it means that we all are responsible for our brothers and sisters that are both the immigrants and the New Yorkers and the Texans, etc.
Number one, I got to say, they're sounding like real Trump-supporting maniacs. They do. They sound like Trump-supporting maniacs. Obviously, what he's saying is correct, right? You can't just have people come in because how are you going to take care of them? That's the problem that New York had. And I think this election came down to one thing: common freaking sense. Crime is a problem. Let's not act like it doesn't exist. We have to deal with it. That's common sense. We can't just take care of people who come in who have no resources and no money. We can't just take care of the world. That's common sense. And now people have to be confronted with the politicians they put in power because they don't have this common sense. And now you kick them out and get somebody in there that does.
I'm not for either party, and I'm going to do my job and my analysis, and I want to make it very clear to people watching the show. Do not expect me to be an activist for any side, because at this point, that's a losing strategy, especially with the Democrats who just refuse to take any advice, refuse to adjust, refuse to recalibrate. And honestly, when I look at which party has made my life worse, and it's because local politics has more of an impact on your day-to-day life, it's the Democrats. And they need to accept that and change. And if they don't, well, they're going to keep losing support, even in cities like Los Angeles and even in states like California.
You know, it's funny because I remember back in the day, TYT was always the progressive channel, right? The left-wing extremists. They were the ones who were always pushing the most radical ideas on the left-wing side. And now to see them shift into this more independent side, you know, this more moderate, I would say they're moderate Democrats. I think they still believe in things like Medicare for all and all these democratic policies. But those social things like men playing in women's sports and like Anna saying crime, there's like a limit to the insanity, and I think they've found their limit. They're all for the, you know, Medicare for all, but they're not for the let's just let them out of jail because we think crime is racist. And that divide, I don't know, what would you label someone like Anna? Is she an independent Democrat or moderate Democrat? Because that's what they're being called in California. So in all those California local elections where the mayors and all that stuff got kicked out of office, the progressive mayors, they're saying the people who beat them are moderate. So maybe that's her lane right now. But I would say this. It's always about the facts. And I think it's very interesting that on this progressive show, the lead host is telling you the Democrats, she lives in a place where Democrats rule, and she's saying they've made her life worse. Sounds like she could have voted for Trump. Don't forget to like, share, subscribe, do like great YouTube stuff. If you're listening to my voice right now, a sub would be great. My name is Nick the Lawyer. I'll see you in the next one. Peace.